Okay, I'm gonna take a few clips here, just a little bit, and I'm gonna give some attributions to Zav Girl, ZAV Girl. She looks at the Darlie Routier case in a non-biased way. She has 112,000 subscribers. Uh, she runs a really good channel. If you like true crime, go over and see her. We'll do a little bit here. He's got Rich and Mystery Maverick up on the panel. And it's been a while since I've listened to this, but I'm going to go through it.
25, I think.
Hey guys, we are live with Rich and Tara, special guest Rich and Tara. We got Bella and Libra here. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing?
Hi, everyone.
Wonderful.
We're so excited to have these guests.
Very excited. So Rich is in contact with Darlie, so he writes to her quite often, actually. And Tara, why don't you tell us your background, Tara?
So I'm actually I don't work in the field at the moment, but
She does not work in forensics at the moment, she says. Okay. Well, that would be sort of like saying that James Cron is just a consultant, right, Mystery Maverick? Not trying to be an asshole.
got a college qualification in forensic
Well, that would be college degree.
science, and I've also got a BSc in psychology with criminology. I got interested in this case.
But you don't work in the field. Now, listen to this.
Years ago, I actually watched Forensic Detectives or Forensic Files, one of those, and I was the same as Rich. I mean, I saw the luminol testing, and I was like, she is guilty as sin, and she should, serve her punishment. Until I actually read a book by Don Davis. And it's actually one of the most sort of...
To remember that the book Don Davis by Hush Little Babies, he had, in the end of it, he thanks Darlie Key, he thanks Darren, he thanks all of them. So that book, they won't do any, like they think it's going to help Darlie's case, they'll allow you to write the book. And he gave acknowledgments to them. Right? She gave acknowledgement. He did, Don Davis. And at the end of the book, he really didn't say that she wasn't guilty. But she said that she first watched Forensic Files, and then she read one book.
Rounded books out there on the Darlie case. It's not biased, I don't feel.
There's one excerpt in that book where they said that they took her to the Kerrville jail for court, right, to wait for court. They put her in the jail, and they immediately handed her a pail and told her to scrub the jail floors. There's an excerpt from that book that says that. But to her, it's not biased.
And after reading that book, I just thought, there's something that's not quite right here. Something they're not telling us. So I looked into the case, and I started by looking at the evidence, and then also reading all the transcripts. So after doing that and seeing all the photos, I was convinced that she was innocent.
So now you're convinced that she's innocent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look.
Do you guys want to ask her anything, Bella or Libra?
Does Rich want to tell us what made him so convinced and fight for Darlie?
That was going to be my question too. How did he get involved? How did this catch your attention?
Well, I had a good friend of mine back home in Ohio bring this case to my attention because she knew that I investigated cases. I've investigated cases. Oh man, where do we begin? From the John Kennedy assassination all the way down to the John Benet Ramsey murder. So I've been involved in a lot of different forums, and she told me, she said, "I'd like you to look at this case. I think you might find it interesting."
There's the whole investigating cases things out there, right? He doesn't say he's a private investigator, but he leans toward that he's an investigator.
And so I took a look at it, and like Tara, at the beginning, I thought she was guilty as could be, and then I told my friend that, and my friend said, "I think you better look at it again." And I looked a little bit closer, and then I started getting some questions. After I started getting away from a lot of the documentaries that were telling a lot of no truths and just making up stuff in some cases. And so I started looking at things even a little bit closer because of that. And then I started looking and looking. And I'm going to tell you what, to come up with a final conclusion, it took well over a year to do that. In the meanwhile, I was able to get to know Darlie Key very well. And I got to know some of Darlie Lynn's other friends who I really, really like, and got to know quite a few of them very well. And the more and more digging I would do, I would go a little bit more to the innocent side. And then I was able to actually match up all the crime scene evidence to what Darlie Lynn said exactly happened, and it matches perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no question on my mind at that point that she was innocent. I began talking with her, writing her, and become very close friends with her.
How's her like mental?
Okay, so you got sucked in by the family. You met Darlie Key. That happened to me, Rich. I kind of got sucked in when she saw that I was kind of thinking that she might be innocent. So I started posting a little bit on Facebook, in the Free Darlie, and I kind of started the Free Darlie group. I was like, yeah, I think she's innocent, blah, blah, blah. So, hey, how are you? I'm Darlie Key. Yeah, I'm Gia, and my name is so-and-so. Oh, cement shoes. Look at this. Check this out. Was his friend possibly BryanSt.John? He used to have the ultimate Darlie playlist then. I really did. The channel got shut down. We deleted it. That Cement Shoes used to be a regular sub of mine. I can recognize Cement Shoes because he's got a picture of the Iceman as for a pro. Okay, Zav just asked, what's Darlie's mental state like?
Is she like scared every day of when that date is going to come, or?
She is an amazingly strong woman. 25 years on death row. She's in a cell 23 out of 24 hours a day. And she is not only an amazing writer, but she's very optimistic about the future because she knows for a fact she didn't do it. And the future does look optimistic as well, by the way, but I can't get into a lot of detail with that at this time, but it does look pretty good.
Rich, there you go with that whole shit. I can't get into it. No, can't say. You know how long we've been hearing that? Why can't you get into it, Rich? You're trying to save an innocent woman, and they're telling you, shh. What's the big secret?
But she's very optimistic. She's very caring. One thing that I noticed in her letters, she doesn't write letters and do that boo-hoo stuff. Oh, look at me, poor me. She's always wanting to know about me. How's my garden doing? How's work doing? How's Bonnie doing? How's everything doing? I hope everything's great. She's really a good writer, and she's a very charismatic woman and very strong, powerful woman.
Wait, so how did you first contact her? You just like wrote her a letter?
I wrote her a letter.
Like
I wrote her a letter and told her I was an investigator, and I knew without a question of doubt she was innocent. And
you told her you were an investigator, Rich. You told her you were an investigator. Okay, so there's Rich twice saying that he investigates cases, but he didn't say he was a private investigator. I'll give him that, but he alludes to it.
I would like to have some conversation with her. Well, lo and behold, she wrote me back almost immediately.
Because she thought you were an investigator, Rich.
And we been writing back and forth ever since. I've got a stack of letters over here. I mean, you wouldn't believe the size of them. But she sends me pictures all the time, and lets me know how certain thing, like she has, like she actually works there in the prison, and when she works, she actually gets a little bit of extra time, if you will, like recreational time, to where she can actually go outside or stuff like that. So she chooses to work because of that. And she's just an amazing person. I would have folded up and given up 24 years ago if that had been me in there. But she still continues to fight on.
I know she's got to be so nervous because she's on her last appeal, right? And then after that, she could get a date anytime, huh? Like, what is your hopes? Do you think that that she will get a new trial, or what is her hopes? What are your hopes? Do you think it's possible?
Well, I always felt as though she had a better shot with a new trial rather than for complete exoneration. I just felt as though it would be better and easier for her to do that, because
if she got a new trial, what they're going to do is slap that affidavit that Darren wrote down in front of her. Then they're going to slap down the interview she did about Barry Fife. I found out about things that I didn't know about back then. And they're going to use all the media where she said it actually nicked the carotid artery. They're going to throw everything that she said back in her face. And it's only going to end up, they're talking about me in the chat. They remember my other channel. Yeah. Yeah, a new trial would do nothing but compound it. Now, they might have a battle of the experts. But why do you think Doug Mulder didn't call any experts? He knows. He's a lawyer. Let's see about this new trial.
Because obviously the trial that occurred in Kerrville in 1996 and 1997 was not even, I don't think it was a very good trial for her at all.
Not
But anyway,
fair. No, I agree.
But I think if any honest jury were to hear her case with a compatible defense attorney, I believe that they could destroy.
Mulder was the best. Yeah. An honest jury. Now the jury's liars, Rich.
Destroy the prosecution's case against her easily.
Yeah.
But I asked Darlie Lynn about that one time. I said, what are you shooting for here? And she said, well, I'm going for complete exoneration. I don't need another trials. I didn't do it, and I'm going for complete exoneration.
Yeah, she wants complete exoneration. She doesn't want a reduction in sentence, because if she gets a reduction in sentence, her appeals are over, and she gets to go live with the women that miss their kids that they didn't kill. Use your brains.
So
Absolutely.
that's where the ball's at right now.
And I also wanted to ask, because one of my questions ties into the exoneration. If Darlie Lynn is exonerated for this crime and found, not guilty, will Darlie Lynn be seeking damages against wrongful conviction and maybe damages in the illegal surveillance that was taken during the funeral and things like that?
Well, actually, the surveillance that she's talking about was where Jimmy Patterson and Chris Froush put the bug in the urn. They've already been to court over that, and it was not illegal, because you cannot expect privacy in a public setting as ruled by the courts when you're in public. And Rest Haven was public, and Jimmy Patterson and Chris Froush, the two detectives on the case, they did ask for permission to record there. And it's already been brought into court. They've already got rid of it. It's done. They cannot not overrule that again.
Well, I can tell you what I know. I would hope that she would. I have told her that I would hope that she would go after that.
You said that you could say what you know. you know that you hope.
For damages like that. She hasn't really indicated it to me either way. But I'm pretty sure that she would want to do something like that. I mean, my God, I mean, that's this thing. Not only did she lose two of her children and her entire life. I mean, even, she made a good point to me one time. She said,
she can only get damages if they find, wow, I'm dizzy. If they find that the prosecution withheld evidence that should have been posted at the trial. Now, if there's new evidence that shows someone else did this, she's not entitled to compensation. You're only entitled to compensation if she can prove she was wrongfully convicted, and she won't be able to do that.
you know what, Rich, even if I'm exonerated, I'm never going to have my life back. I'm never going to have my children back. My life's done.
Yep.
Does her other son visit her at all? Does she have any contact?
Drake lives in Colorado with his girlfriend Nicole, and he's doing very well.
Why are you giving out personal information about Drake and Nicole?
He does have contact with her. I know that, and Nicole as well also rates Darlie Lynn. I do know that. Now, because of the COVID and everything else, visitation has not gone very good for anybody because there's so many restrictions because of it. But I know, coming all the way up to when COVID started, yes, he did visit her rather regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves his mother. He really does. He's a good kid.
Does he have contact with his father, Darren?
Yes, lots of contact with his father.
He lived with Darren out at that $869,000 ranch that he had there for a while.
He lived with him in Lubbock until he just moved to Colorado. I'd say about a year ago, he moved to Colorado with his girlfriend. And I know Darren helped him move up there. And, he has constant contact with his father and his stepmother and the family for all intents and purposes.
Has Darren, when Darren got remarried, did he end up having other children?
No, it's quite a story behind that. He is, the woman's name is Cindy Black.
Mm-hmm.
He actually dated her before he dated Darlie Lynn.
Yeah.
And then he ended.
Cindy Black is the nicest woman. I tell you, I was able to talk to her. I didn't record it. She didn't want me to. I mean, I asked her, but she didn't want me to. She's the nicest person. She's kind of tired of Darren getting blamed for this, though.
Ended up hooking back up with her later down the road.
Yeah, because she was his high school sweetheart or something of that nature, correct?
Because prior to Darlie.
Yeah, and see, I've seen like some crazy comments, like, he went back to her, and that's where his heart was. And I know that there had been some talk about a possible affair on Darren's side while him and Darlie were together. And there's been some speculation that was who he was having an affair with.
No. The speculation that he was having an affair with was Darlie's sister, Dana. That was the speculation. I want to see what Rich has to say to this.
I've never heard that. I've never heard that he had an affair with her specifically.
Okay.
I don't know. Now I've heard some other things, but I haven't heard that.
Well, I could send it to you, and you could see it.
I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying
I had read it.
It was with Dana. There was speculation on that. Yes. They think some of the reason why Darlie really lost her temper that night is because when Darren drove Dana home, it was like a 15-minute drive that turned into a 45-minute
the other night and some things, and I thought that it was really interesting and it caught my attention. I know that there had been some issues between Darlie and Darren and some things that were going downhill that, I want to ask you about, later on. But
So, does Darlie ever talk about Darren? Has she ever mentioned
not
them?
not it very very minute ways. Like for an example, we were talking about children one time, and Darlie Lynn said this is how she would mention Darren. She said, "I wanted to have 8 children, but Darren wouldn't allow it."
Mm.
You know, that's like the only
Ah.
that's the only way that she would really mention Darren.
Dude, she's gonna tell you that. The consensus is that the children were in her way.
She was talking with my missus about some stuff in a letter, and she said, "Well, working with Darren on a business aspect with our business, I got a little bit of business experience and so on and so forth." And so that's kind of how she mentions him, but she doesn't really go into a lot of detail. And I'm not sure that she really cares to, but she's never said that she didn't care to. One thing you have to be careful with this case, Av girl and ladies, I know Tara will tell you this, is the misinformation. The misinformation in this case is huge. And sadly, there's a lot of crazies that surround this case on the innocent side and the guilty side.
Right. And
Yeah,
that was
we've
going to be
seen a
one
little.
of my questions
I-
too.
I could tell you things you wouldn't believe that I've heard from people.
Well, that's that, and that was going to be one of my questions to you was what is some of the misinformation that is out there on this case? What are some things that are highly misconstrued that needs to be set straight on the record?
Just about everything.
Oh, really?
Honest to God. Tara, would you agree?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, just things that are quite outrageous, like they make things up like Devon was stabbed through to the concrete on the underneath the carpet of the floor. You know, it's
Well, you know where that comes from? That comes from Darren on the Lisa Gibbons show when he was asked specifically. When Lisa said to him, Lisa asked Darren, it has been said that the force of the knife was so strong that it went through one of the boys' bodies and into the concrete below him. And Darren said, yeah. And Darlie Key shook her head up and down. Yeah. So you want to clear that misinformation up? You clear that up with Darren and Darlie Key because they agreed to it. And you could see it right on the Lisa Gibbons show.
just stuff
I
that's
heard that.
unnecessary.
I believe
well,
that. I'm
Unnecessary. It's just so unnecessary. It's like something Nancy Grace would come up with, you know?
Because it came from Darren on the Lisa Gibbons show. Thank you very much for that, Terry, for helping us make our point.
Wow.
Well,
And-
here's you want me to tell you one of my personal favorites?
She'll probably
is?
start calling her concrete mum or something, you know? It's
Yeah.
something like Nancy Grace, you know, like dream up. She
What-
likes
what
to
a-
be
what-
controversial and you see what I mean? Like they make things that are just totally beyond, and not even that. That what I just said was
Mhm.
actually said on TV, on national TV.
Darren said it. It was asked to Darren, and he said, yeah, it was. And Darlie Key's right beside him, shaking her head up and down. Yes, it went through. Yes, he agreed with that. Thank you very much. Thanks for helping us make our point, Tara. I don't mean to be mean and nasty, but I just take this very seriously. I don't mean anything personal by doing this video.
In a documentary, and it was actually said by Walling, officer. Sorry, the first officer on the scene.
Matt, I think Matt Wallen.
Matt Walling. So
Yeah.
it was
Said by Matt Walling. I would have to. I would like for them to show where that was said by Matt Walling. That would be helpful for Darlie if it was said by Matt Walling.
actually said by him as well. So it's been propagated as well by the police and prosecution when it's not true.
Prosecution did not say that anywhere in the trial. Nowhere. She's saying the prosecution said that. That I know. They did not say it.
It's just simply not true.
Right, and it's simply not true when Darren and Darlie Key agreed to it on national TV. Thank you, Tara.
Well, one of my personal favorites is I've got a interview from the press at the time when it was being investigated initially in '96 about there were two huge insurance policies on both of those boys. Well, that's just simply not so. There was
Press does get things wrong. They said that in my case, the press said that my son, when the police came into the hospital, that he ran from the hospital. He never even went to the hospital. The press, you can accept, you can guarantee that there'll be something wrong. Like when Susan Sarandon said, the necklace was so deeply embedded into her wound that it had to be surgically removed. Yeah.
two $5,000 insurance policies on those boys, and it cost $12,000 to bury.
It cost $13,000, Rich. And if you listen to my, you're only $1,000 off. But if you listen to my interview with Cyrilda said that she had to pay the extra $3,000.
Bury those boys. They didn't even have enough money to bury them. As a matter of fact, Cyrilda Routier, who sadly passed away a few months ago, kicked in the other $2,000 to
She kicked in $3,000. You're only off by $1,000. That's not a big deal.
bury those boys. And another one is they say that she had full blown postpartum depression. Well, first of all, she was never diagnosed with having anything ever. Number one.
Yeah.
Number
Don't have it. When you're writing in your diary that the kids were just in the way and you call your husband home from work who's trying to run a business, a $250,000 a year business by himself, when you call him at home and say, these kids are just too much for me, I need you to help around the house. That is a bit of postpartum depression. When you write in your diary, forgive me for what I'm about to do. That is postpartum depression. When you are sexually molested by your stepfather, Dennis Stahl, which she said on the stand from age 8 on, that is traumatic stress disorder with psychosis, probably. Just because it didn't go diagnosed doesn't mean she didn't have it.
two, I asked Darlie Lynn about that. I asked her about if she had postpartum depression. She goes, well, I don't know if I had it or not, but I can tell you what was going on with me. She's told me that over a period of a couple weeks, everything seemed to make her cry. And she said once her menstrual cycle.
I tell him about where she was thinking about suicide on her May 3rd, 1996 diary entry. And I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I don't have nothing around me. On her May 3rd diary entry, that she was contemplating suicide. And that when Darren did rush home from work to see if she was okay, that the dog Domain actually pulled out some pill wrappers that she had under the bed, or he wouldn't even have knew about it. And that came from Don Davis's book too. The one Tara said was the one was most non-biased.
Started, it all went away.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And she said this had occurred for only a couple of weeks at most.
I think what she had was the baby blues.
Yeah, you're saying the baby blues and PTSD, postpartum depression, are the same thing. Darren said she had the case of the baby blues on TV.
I'm not sure if you guys use that term.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like she had the baby blues, which is something that nearly probably all new mothers will tell you. I've been a mother.
Well, let me tell you something. I have kids with 4 different women, and I've never seen it. Never.
I've had a child, and your hormones just go up and down. It's like a drop in your hormones. So after you have a baby, you will get teary, whether it's for a couple of days, some people, or just
Ask your husband to stop doing what he's doing when he's running a business, to come home and help you with these kids. I feel like everybody expects too much of me. And Rich wants to talk about that couple of weeks. That couple of weeks was just a couple of weeks before the murders.
Just the once or maybe
Mhm.
for a couple of weeks. It's just a normal thing that happens to women, and I feel like it's the man that has put that idea forward. that,
Right.
that she was for, because they don't understand. A man couldn't possibly really understand how a woman feels with the baby blues or depression, or do you see what I mean? Of those.
Yeah,
Well, you
So,
also,
absolutely. And people talk about the journal entries that Darlie Lynn had, going on. And I had run across some of her journal entries last night. And as I was reading the actual excerpts that she had written into the journal, I personally didn't see anything that would red alert me to saying, okay, this person is suffering from a mental illness, or this person is suffering from, any type of bad. You know what I mean?
yeah.
She seemed to me like
Please forgive me for what I'm about to do. Life has just been too hard for so long. Okay, I don't know this lady. Nothing against her, but she didn't see nothing wrong with that.
like she had normal concerns about life. She was asking what her purpose, what God felt her purpose was in this world. And hoping for the best for, family and
She also was talking about in her journal entries that she doesn't know why Dennis did what he did to her, that somebody must have hurt him when he was a child, and she prays that he gets right with that. Dennis molested her, and she wrote about that in her journals. Dennis is her stepdad. You didn't must not have catch that part, young lady.
and I just it didn't strike me as any red flag personally when I read the entries
Yeah,
itself.
not a homicidal
no, not at
maniac.
all.
Yes, yeah, and
Yeah, they make it.
I was blown
But
away. I was like, where do people get this idea that she was mentally distraught and
She said, "Forgive me for what I'm about to do. I don't want my boys to look at me and see a miserable person every time. You don't see, if you don't see anything wrong with that, that's okay. That's your opinion. But something was going on with her on May 3rd, just a month or so, a month before the murders.
homicidal and things like that, because reading that, I would think she's just, going through everyday life and dealing with
Yeah,
so many different
but they
things.
cherry picked that. They cherry picked parts of
Yes.
her
yeah,
diary that they wanted the jury to see. Like Greg Davis, yeah, he may be able to, talk the birds from the trees, but
Hmm.
he's a manipulator, and most sort of
He's the prosecutor, and that's his job to take those journal entries and show you this is what she was writing about. Darlie wrote it, not Greg Davis.
sorry to say this, but most sort of barristers and things are, they have to be. They're trying to, make their case and whatever, but some are a bit more manipulative than others. And I think he knew exactly what to cherry pick. He knew exactly
For him to pick, he wouldn't get any cherries.
what would hit a nerve with those jurors. And those jurors were completely let's just say, well, Rich will say it was in the Bible Belt, so
yeah,
they're very sort of
Hmm.
stuck in their way type of people. They were
Talk about what a religious woman Cerilda was, and what a God fearing woman Darlie Key is. And Darlie was writing into her journal about the Lord. She was also experiencing pain from a recent death. So, as far as the Bible Belt goes, Darlie Key to this day uses verses from the Bible. So does Darlie. It's not based on the geographical position of the people that were hearing the case. Remember, they wanted to move it away from Dallas because they didn't think she'd get a fair trial in Dallas based on seeing the news. It's like, okay, when are you going to arrest this woman? Now, is Dallas part of the Bible Belt?
They wasn't very open, and they probably just took everything he said as, just as
Gospel.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what I can tell you.
The things that Greg Davis said. They blame this all on Greg Davis. But you had Greg Davis, you had Tom Bevel, you had James Cron, you had Dr. Parchman Townsend, you had all these other people that got Jimmy Patterson, you had Jack Colby, who carried Damon's body out. You had David Waddell, who said that he kept telling her to help with her babies, and she wouldn't. You had Darren explaining that he all he could see was Darlie's head running back and forth in the kitchen, and then he started hollering for Waddell to help, and Waddell wouldn't help, so he had to run to the nurse that lived across the street, Karen Neal, because he needed some help. Greg Davis didn't make up anything that those investigators came up with. He was going on their reports.
Okay, especially in Kerrville where the trial was held.
Mm.
It's kind of like one of them one-horse towns, okay?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And these people,
Let me tell you this. Richard Mosty, Darlie's attorney, was born and raised in Kerrville. So they had one of their own defending Darlie.
they're very conservative folk. They're
Mhm.
they're Bible folk, very much so. Very, very strong Bible folk.
And
Pretty much in the whole state, but it's real bad in Kerrville.
Well, is it real bad? Isn't Cyrilda a God-fearing woman? She prayed with me on my interview with her. Darlie Key still uses Bible verses today. So, did she get a jury of her peers? Pretty good question, don't you think? Comment below.
Now, they're getting presented at trial with a woman who
Mhm.
is bleach blonde, had
Right.
a breast enlargement. He
Right.
knew. Greg Davis knew that
Yeah.
would strike nerves on those people.
Right.
What brought that up in a Dallas trial? Remember, he was the Dallas DA, not the Kerrville DA. I don't think that her boobs and her bleach blonde hair and her wanting to look good makes her a killer. But it shows a bit of self-centeredness. A little bit.
And which is nothing but character assassination, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
Like when you call us a haters and circle of hell people.
I've said it on my show. I'm friends with a lot of women that have breast enlargements.
Mhm.
They wouldn't even, the thought wouldn't even cross their mind that they would want to kill a child.
For if you're having difficulties financially, they were $200,000 in debt, Rich. And if you're having difficulty with the finances, she wanted him to sell the boat. He couldn't get his car fixed. Things like that. She had to sit home, right? But you want to buy $5,000 boobs. That's what they were talking about.
So,
Right.
and they're really good people. So it's just ridiculous. But when they hear that, okay, these types of people that
That's the type of people. Okay, Rich, tell me how many of those jurors were actually born and raised in Kerrville? Kerrville is a retirement community full of $1 million houses. How many of those jurors were actually born and raised there?
live in Kerrville and that were on that the jury, automatically they think evil, bad person, and
I'm trying to say what they think. If you heard Rena Wade, she said we didn't want her to be guilty. What they did is they tried to extract some remorse out of Darlie. They wanted to see what would happen when they found that she was going to take the stand. They had a big full-length picture of Devin and Damon facing towards her. And they wanted to see if she would break down or get a reaction or something, and she didn't. Did the people in Kerrville have anything to do with the letters that Darlie wrote saying, I knew who did this? His name is Glenn Mize. His name is Gary Austin. I know what happened in that house that night. Did they write those letters, the people in Kerrville, or did Darlie write those letters? You're blaming this on the jurors.
It was very male chauvinistic, her whole
Mhm.
trial.
I
Well,
agree.
And it was
I mean,
96,
it was
right?
geared towards Greg Davis and Toby.
More women on the jury than there were men. So if they were being male chauvinistic, that should have favored the women. But what they were thinking about was what would a mother do? She didn't help her kids. Did the people in Kerrville make her decide to stand there while everybody else was taking care of her kids that were dying on the floor in front of her?
Bishop's ego rather than anything else. It
Mm-hmm.
literally everything they painted her as was chauvinistic way of thinking about women, that they can't have boob jobs, that they can't have this, that,
She can't have them. They're saying, "Look at me, my self-centeredness. Look at us."
and the other. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Anna Nicole Smith and how she got treated. Well,
yeah,
that was like after, it's like a small
Mhm.
version of that, but everyone was hooked on the thought that she had killed her two babies for vanity's sake, to get on with a better life.
It wasn't for vanity's sake. It was, in my opinion, she just had she blew up at Darren because he was financially providing for her, and then he all of a sudden the financially she couldn't shop till she dropped anymore. His car was broken down, just needed a little bit of repairs. He had to take her car and leave her at home with the boys. The neighborhood said that she was fine as long as the kids weren't in the house. There have been reports of the boys being out in the construction area. One person testified that the one son, Devin, was playing in the construction area by himself and that Darlie just ignored it. That person wasn't from Kerrville. Okay? The 911 operator who she said, we could have gotten the prince maybe. That person wasn't from Kerrville.
Or whatever the
yeah, but she
narrative.
slit her own throat. But she was so vain that she slit her own throat right where you can see it. I mean,
And
that just doesn't
She was vain. Said she was self-centered.
add up. That whole story doesn't fit together.
right, and it was 2
She can't
millimeters
be
from the
vain
carotid,
yeah.
Well,
Monica?
artery. I
one of
mean,
my favorite sayings that I like to say is, "Why stage a crime scene and not use the stage?"
Mm.
It,
Tell
it
us what
doesn't.
you mean by that, Rich. Tell us.
Yeah,
Well,
elaborate.
there's just a lot of things. We can start right at the beginning. And Tara, if I miss something with this, because there's so much, cut in, please.
Please help me.
First of all, let's take a look at the sock.
Mhm.
Okay, let's take a look at the sock. So we're going to stage the crime scene.
Okay, let's take a look at the sock. And before he even says anything, and I will tell you how the experts looked at the sock. The intruder's got the sock on his hand. He attacks Devin. He attacks Damon. Then he attacks Darlie, according to what she said. Whose blood do you expect to see on that sock? Because Darlie's wasn't on there.
By going 75 yards from the crime scene to the trash receptacle by the sewer where the sock was found. Another 75 yards back. It's 150 yards. To go takes 26 seconds, and that's running full blast. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So just with that, you're down 1 minute.
Here they go with this bullshit timeline again. Nope.
Okay. You're down 1 minute. Now you have 1 other minute to stage the rest of the crime scene. What?
You don't. Why do you have 1 other minute to stage the rest of the crime scene? Why couldn't she have put that table on the end and pushed that plant over while the boys were still sleeping? Why couldn't she do that? You're not going to hear it. Why couldn't she cut the screen before she killed anybody? Why couldn't she, Rich? Why could she not do that? And I'm not mad at Rich anybody. I mean, never, I just get passionate about the case.
What I'm referring to is you got to break a glass. You got to plant the murder weapon in the doorway of the kitchen and the utility room.
She planted the murder weapon in the doorway of the utility room. She didn't do that because there was no evidence of a knife being dropped there.
You got to cut the screen from the outside.
Yeah, from the outside, right? So if you look where that couch is, there's some sliding glass doors right there, right? Why couldn't she have grabbed that knife and cut that screen from the outside while the boys were asleep? Why couldn't she? Tell us why she couldn't do that, Rich.
Outside.
Okay,
You gotta explain that. How?
Okay.
But go ahead.
No. They said when they were trying to set a bail for Darlie Lynn that the screen was cut from the inside. Well, then after forensic studies, it would come to show that it got cut from the outside.
They said it appeared to be cut from the inside. Also, the same thing with Officer Sarah Jones's hair that was found in the screen. The DA said, well, that we found a blonde hair that was consistent to Darlie's in there, but that wasn't used to indict her. And when they found that, they said it was consistent because it wasn't bleached blonde hair. Then they took it and had it tested, and they came back and said, okay, we were wrong. It was actually an officer of ours that was at the scene. A lot of people say she wasn't at the scene, but she was at the scene, and I've got proof of it because I've got the letter that shows she was there.
Yeah.
So and you also got
trial transcripts.
That is correct. Now if you look at you also got to understand the geography of the neighborhood. It's unique in many ways. It just doesn't make any sense. Number one, why the sock was put where it was, providing it was planted there by Darlie Lynn. It doesn't make any
sense, and a lot of us, and it doesn't make any sense to the defense and to the prosecution. They both kind of just veered off of it. But what makes sense to me is she knew that knife, that sock came from the house, right? And that it had the blood from the boys on it, but not hers. And I think she tried to throw it down that sewer and she missed.
Any sense. Not just that, there's no blood on the sock, which means if she had staged the scene at.
Are you saying there's no blood on the sock, Rich? There's Devin and Damon's blood on the sock. Did I hear that correctly?
From the outside.
Yeah.
So and you also got
trial transcripts.
That is correct. Now if you look at you also got to understand the geography of the neighborhood. It's unique in many ways. It just doesn't make any sense. Number one, why the sock was put where it was, providing it was planted there by Darlie Lynn. It doesn't make any sense. Not just that, there's no blood on the sock, which means.
Yes, he said that.
Means if she had staged the scene after she planted the sock, that's when she would have had to come back into the house and stab herself in the arm, cut her throat,
change
stab herself in the chest, and cause a bunch of scratches and contusions to her arm.
Why couldn't she do that? What you guys keep saying that she didn't hear it because knife, that happens fast. Why couldn't she do that before she called 911? There's evidence that she did that in front of the sink, Rich. There's also a hesitation. when on her arm, there's a hesitation wound there. There's a hesitation in her knife in the slit to her throat, and that is common with self-inflicted wounds because it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has under 1 minute to do all this other stuff. Okay, there's not enough time. And you'll hear a lot of that from non-supporters. You'll hear that from a lot of people that on the prosecution side. Oh, there is no timeline. There is a timeline.
There is no timeline. There is none because Darren went to bed at 10:30. The boys went to sleep quick soon after, probably. Well, we know they went to sleep because they were killed while they were sleeping. So as soon as the boys went to sleep, and Darlie, why was Darlie down there? Okay, Darlie was down there. There's two different stories of why she was down there. Darren says she was down there because the baby would root and grunt in his crib. The supporters would tell you that he rocked in his crib and made a bunch of noise on the wooden floor. But at any rate, it never bothered Darren. Darren could sleep, and she had been down there for a week. Right? And we want to know why Darlie couldn't hear it. If she could hear that. And the supporters, kitchen table research, she would say, well, knives happen real quick. So why couldn't she have come, brought the sock back, dropped the sock off, and then go over to the kitchen and slice her throat, and then stab her arm real quick? Because when you kill, look, check this out. When you kill, right, according to criminal psychology, which Tara should know about, according to FBI profiling, when you kill, you get an adrenaline rush. Why couldn't she tell us why she couldn't do that?
There's a timeline on any type of crime as such.
The timeline started at about 12:30 when Darren went to bed. That's when the timeline started. Because any time after that, she had time to do all that stuff, except for cut herself. And we believe that when she cut herself, right, that's when she noticed that Damon was trying to crawl towards the entranceway, possibly to get his dad. And that we believe that she took that knife and slit her throat, right, which she'd been all right as far as prints and all that. But we believe that she stabbed Damon twice more. There's standing blood drops over where Damon was found up against the wall.
That's a great, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, because I was going to say, I mean, as far as the sock is concerned, both boys' blood was found on the socks.
She just checked you because you said there was no blood found on the sock, Rich. And she just checked you. Thank you, young lady. I don't know who that is. These women that are on this panel, Zav, and I don't know who this other young lady is, but they're approaching it in a very good way. It seems like the one below is a supporter, but she's approaching it in a logical way. She did not let Rich get away with that.
But at any given
Now
point
Rich is shaking his head up and down.
in time, was there any like skin cells of Darlie's or anything to point to Darlie found on the inside or outside of that sock?
There were skin cells found on the inside of that sock. Inside toe. Yes.
Great question, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because this is what they told us about that. There was either skin cells or saliva found.
Epidural cells. They're skin cells, Rich.
On the sock that belonged to Darlie. There's quite a bit of a difference there, isn't there? So was it skin cells or saliva?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
and they never determined which one it was.
Right. And one thing that I found very interesting and compelling was there was an episode of the Unsolved Mysteries that had covered the Darlie Routier case, and Darren was a guest speaker on there or whatever. And one thing that he had said that he felt that he was absolutely certain that when an intruder entered the home, that he has no doubt that they used that sock to try to asphyxiate Darlie or to keep her from screaming while they were, going after her. And
If he wanted to keep her from screaming, that's a very good logical point. Darlie says she woke up and the man was walking away from her, right? Why didn't she scream then? And then she said she got up and she began to chase him through the kitchen. Why didn't she scream then? She said Damon, who had had a couple mortal wounds, had 6 wounds altogether in his back. She said he got up, right? First she said he got up and tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Mommy, mommy," quietly. And that when she was chasing this intruder out, she didn't scream then. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you scream for your husband? Conveniently, she didn't scream till the intruder was gone. Think about that.
I was just thinking, like, how could you be absolutely positively sure of that? You know what I mean?
Well, it's the sock is a very big question mark, I think, just about for everybody in the case. It's
Absolutely.
very hard to explain that
The
sock.
sock that didn't have any blood on it, Rich. You said it didn't have any blood on it. And this lady below checked you on that. Politely.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is this. They actually had dogs out there with for scent, at the
Mhm.
time of the murders had occurred. And whatever scent those dogs picked up, they followed it all the way to the sock.
Wrong. Wrong. And I was wrong on this one too. Okay? This is twice I've caught you wrong within a minute and a half, Rich. Officer Tom Ward found the sock, and he did not have a canine find the sock. It did not happen. And I had to go back. See, I learned this from Danelle because I was arguing with her about, no, a dog found it. She said, nope, sure didn't. And I went back and I looked, and she was right. Danelle was right. There was no canine that smelled that sock. I know dogs smell each other.
And then didn't go no further. So
I didn't go no further. But let's say that a canine did smell that sock, right? Because this is my logic. If he went to the sock and didn't go any further, that would be because somebody turned around and went back to the house where they just came from. But there was no dog. There was no canine that found the sock. Officer Tom Ward found it. You can look. I believe it's in testimony.
it's apparent that somebody had left in a car at that point. All right, that's what that pretty much indicates. Would you agree with me on that, Tara?
Yeah.
Sure she
It
would.
indicates that someone drove away. I've seen this in kidnapping cases. If you've ever seen someone like in a kidnapping case where they
Except for a dog did not find that sock. The canine that was out there, his name was Bexar, and they had him go around the house. This is the way Danelle explained it to me. That they had him go around the house, but he did not go into the back alley. It was a totally different canine officer. And I learned this from Danelle. This is you want to talk about misinformation, Rich. You just did it in front of 6,000 people.
use dogs, it's usually children and things like that. But I saw a case with one little girl and she was on a bike, and that's how they figured out that someone had come along in a truck and taken her, because the scent stopped there. It doesn't move from that spot. It doesn't go back. If it was Darlie and she went back, you would expect the dogs to have gone back
That is
into
correct.
the house.
Never thought of it like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like Zav's channel. I go over and look at her true crime. She does a really good job. She's the most polite true crimer that I've ever seen. But that would make sense if a dog found that sock. Look it up. The trial transcript, Officer Thomas Ward, and I believe it's in. Let me stop right here and check. Let me be sure and check. If anybody wants to fact check me, it is in by Thomas Dean Ward, and he talks about he looked down and found the sock. He did not have a canine with him. He did not. But if anybody wants to fact check me on that, they can do that.
So the dogs didn't turn around at that point and
No,
head
they
back to
go
the house.
stationary. They go
Yeah.
stationary. They
Yeah,
just
they
sit.
just
They
stop.
just sit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Interesting.
But of course,
It would be interesting if it was true, Zav. It's not true. This is why I'd like to be on a panel with Rich and Zav Girl at some point, because she does a good true crime. Of course I know how to act. I've been on panels with other people. I've had I act totally differently, but when it's my channel, I'm gonna say what I want.
they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that on the documentaries. They don't tell, like Forensic Files. I used to have a lot of
They don't tell you that because it didn't happen.
respect for Forensic Files until I studied
Me
this
too.
case. I've lost all respect for Forensic Files as a result
You
of
studied this case enough to not know that there was blood on that sock, Rich.
this case. Horrible, horrible information, junk science at best, and it's just a best guess. Can't prove a thing. Can't prove a thing with what they say, but it's how they word it and how they tell the story that makes it sound plausible.
Yeah, that's more misinformation as well. That the sink lit up like a, like a.
Now, how's that misinformation if they sprayed luminol on it? You wasn't there. How's that misinformation? They said it lit up when they sprayed luminol on it. You wasn't in there.
Circus or whatever they said.
I still seriously question if they even
like
did the luminol.
Oh, so
They did the luminol, and I have the record where the RPD actually, it's documented that they did the luminol there. Yes, absolutely. I have the records on my channel.
you think that might just be a lie or exaggeration?
I've never seen the luminol pictures. I've never seen the report.
That's what
I've got the report. I've got the report, Zav. If you watch this, I have the report. Yes, they did use luminol on that sink, and they used the chalk on the floor. Yes, they did.
that was one of my questions. Have you
not
ever
at the
seen a
trial.
full report about the luminol testing?
I've never
Seen
seen
a
it.
report.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist because I've got it. And so does Pamela Lakes Collins. Yes, there is a report.
I've seen a report, but it was an affidavit, and it was written actually before Darlie's appeals. Obviously, the prosecution were trying to stop her from getting her appeal. So they obviously got people to write affidavits, and one of them was written by the same guy that says that he did this luminol testing on TV, but he never.
I got the report that was done just a little bit before court that they did that, Tara. I could show that.
Testified to it. He never showed any pictures. They never used any photos in the trial. They never said,
Because you have to turn the lights out to use luminol because it'll light up. So if they're in there taking pictures, they would have to use a flash, and that would destroy the test. That would destroy the test. The flash would. Use your brain, man. Come on, you talk about you got a college degree in forensics? Use your brain. Check me on that.
oh, the sink lit up like a, they
Christmas
didn't
tree or
say that in the
something.
trial.
First of all,
Right.
Yeah, Christmas tree or
first of
whatever.
all, I've never been able to understand why they even bothered doing the luminol testing at the sink, because
I want to know the amount of blood that was in there and the blood that went down in the drain. And what they're not telling you is that the cabinets below that came open and Darlie's blood was inside of there and there was nothing down there but cleaning stuff. The towels that were in there that they did find in the house had all of Darlie's blood. So she was wiping things. And they also did they sprayed the couch with luminol, right? And when they sprayed the couch with luminol, there was a child's handprint that they had to watch it fade away. It destroyed it. The luminol destroyed it.
it doesn't prove a damn thing. Not a damn thing at all. First
What
of
it
all,
proved.
Let's prove a damn thing. Because in their first initial statements, they didn't say anything about Darlie going back and forth to that sink. And when they released the house back to them, Darlie looked over and saw that they took the sink for evidence. Then she suddenly remembered that she was bringing Darren towels. You have footprints that are in front of the sink, but they're going away from it and not to it. You also have glass in the way, or from the wine glass, right? With the footprint was under it, the blood. The footprint was, which indicates that it was broken after, right? Darlie didn't have any cuts to her feet. They did. They tested that. They checked her at the hospital for that.
What it proves, Rich, is it proves confirmation bias.
Oh, well, okay.
Confirmation bias. How does it prove it? They want to know why the blood was at that sink when she wrote down. She didn't write down that she was over at the sink. They want to know why that blood was there. She didn't say anything about going to get towels, and it shouldn't be on the inside. The towels are in a drawer. Confirmation bias, my ass. I'm gonna keep going with this one.
Okay.
What it proves is that they got the theory in their head. Ron made that theory up. He looked at that sink, saw the blood there. He made that theory up, and everyone else went along with it, that theory.
Was Darlie and Darren's written statements. They did not mention her running back and forth and dropping towels. They did not. No.
Everyone just went with him, what he said. And then he tried to get the evidence to prove that that was the case, but he couldn't because it wasn't correct. His theory
Proved that there was a cleanup at that sink. They proved that that sink was wiped out. That's what he proved. Did that intruder stop on the way out to wipe the sink down? Maybe make a cup of coffee, grab a sandwich? That was a nice intruder he cleaned up on the way out. That's what he proved.
wasn't correct. He couldn't prove it.
Right. Darlie Lynn said that she was going back and forth and wetting towels
She only said that after she realized that they took the sink for evidence. That's when she said that. Zav girl and this young lady down here, please read Darlie's first initial statement. She didn't mention going over there. Not at all.
the sink. Naturally, there's going to be blood there. And
That's
if,
what
you're, and if you're running water,
Yes.
You don't hear running water in the 911 call. You don't hear it. And the phone was right there.
you're going to
I'm
be
thinking.
rinsing, you're going to be rinsing the blood down the sink.
Exactly. My thought exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Now, anybody with any common sense, Darren had 7 years of CPR, right? He says on one show that he took 7-year courses on CPR. What do you bring to somebody that's bleeding to stop the blood? You bring them something that's going to absorb the blood. A wet towel won't absorb the blood. A wet towel will help you wipe a sink out, though. A wet towel will help you wipe the counter off because you just slit your throat and the splatter went all over the place. And there was an indication that the counter and the sink had been wiped out.
And there were, 27 wet towels found at the scene? Is that correct?
Yeah, but a lot of people.
They say that the towels were wet, right? They say that they're wet, but if you take a picture of a towel, can you tell it's wet or not? She also said she put a towel on Damon's back, but she didn't apply pressure to it. And she was standing at the end of that counter applying pressure to her neck wound. And the officer Waddell asked her to help. And she didn't. She did not help those boys at all.
People deny that, like the people that think that she's guilty. They say nope, there was no wet towels. Nope, there was none. It's like there's
Well, you can't. There's
pictures of them. We saw them.
There's pictures of towels. There are towels, but you can't tell if they're wet or not. You can't tell from. Okay, take a picture of a dry towel, then take a picture of that same towel wet, and then mix them up and tell us which one's which. You can't tell.
At least a few
Right.
pictures.
Check out my podcast where I have a picture of all the wet towels that were found and look at how I prove how the towels were wet, just like Darlie Lynn said they were.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
And we have to put your link in chat.
Yeah.
So people
Oh,
can
yeah, definitely.
Thanks,
Drop it.
Can you put the link in the chat for my podcast?
There was also some other questions that I had about the crime scene. As far as the back garage window goes, from my understanding, there was an unidentified fingerprint found on that window, as well as the unidentified fingerprint in the living room on the coffee table. Do we know if they have actually been able to run that print?
To run the print because they believe that it's unidentifiable. Uh, they're going to sit here and say that testing has been done that rules everybody out, but it doesn't. They're going to sit here and lie here and just say, well, they're not going to lie. I'm not going to call them liars. But that print that you're talking about on the glass table is in the 85 series. It's 85J, right? That cannot be identified, and they've had plenty of chance to run that through. The reason it doesn't get run through is because it's not identifiable. It's smudged. Cron felt like it was a juvenile fingerprint, but Darlie has not been ruled out for that print. She has not. They're going to say she is, but she has not been.
For the window.
The window I can't explain. The window I would have to do research on that. But I do know that when Darren stepped through that window to show that you could get in and out of it without disturbing the dust. Granted, there was nothing in there. There was no cat cages or nothing that for him to navigate around, and it was bright when he did it. But when Darren stepped in and out of that, he didn't touch the window. You wouldn't need to touch the window to get in and out there.
I believe the window print is a palm print, and I don't know if they can actually run the palm print or if they actually have to have a suspect or someone.
It's a partial palm print.
A partial palm print. Okay.
Yeah.
To...
Well, I know the answer to your question. I can't really answer it because of the ongoing investigation. I've been
Is that shit? Stumped.
Been asked not to. What I can tell you is this: you're referring to J85.
We're referring to 85J. Those prints are in the 85 series. It was 85I and 85J. Those are the ones that they're talking about. The evidence tag that's marked to those are 85J and 85I.
Which was the unidentified fingerprint found on the coffee table, the glass coffee table. And you're right, there was a partial palm print that was found on the upper part of the window where the screen was slashed. And that's all in the works as we speak.
Okay.
Well, the bottom line is you don't need to touch that window to get in and out of that. And Darren proved that to us. There's a video where he does that. He just stepped in and stepped out. He was trying to prove how easy it was to get in and out of the window. But when he did it, the window was actually gone. You got to remember that window had 6 inches when Darren did that. But you don't have to touch the window. And there's reports of Devin and Damon because they had a freezer there. And Darlie would sleep a lot. There was a time that she stayed in her room for 2 weeks. But Darlie would sleep a lot, and the boys would be outside, and they would take the screen off. And they would open the window up, and they would go in and get popsicles. And there was a melted popsicle thing found in the garage.
So I wish I could tell you more, but I've been asked.
That's convenient, Rich. It really is.
Not to, and I can't.
What we hear about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bella.
Go ahead, Bella. Yeah, you haven't got to see.
What we hear about 85J is that it's been tested.
Thank you for it. That's another time that Rich has been corrected by these ladies on this panel, right? I've been studying this case forever. First, this young lady down below clarified that there was blood found on the sock. And now this lady below knows that it's 85J. Rich, are you shaking your head yet?
And that there's no male touch DNA found in it. And do you want to comment on that?
No, go ahead.
Well, thank you, because he wants to hear. He's learning from you right now.
I mean, that's what, because, while we're doing the transcripts, and I think the three of us, Libra, Zav, and I, were.
Lady that's talking, her name is Bella Lugosi. And I guess that this lady below, her name is Libra. She's nice, gentle young ladies.
Seeing so many discrepancies inside the transcripts, right? We're learning as we go, and we're deep into the case that way, and we're learning as we go.
Well,
And we have questions. Yeah.
Let's not forget that there was 33,000 mistakes in those transcripts.
We're fine.
There was 3,000 mistakes in it. Sandra Halsey, she's the one that did it. But they reconstructed it by using the audio tapes that were playing in the courtroom. There's no one that has ever come forward and said that's not what I said on the stand. So they used the audio to reconstruct it. Sandra Halsey lost her license over that. She did have to admit that she felt like Darlie was guilty, but the courts ruled that it's a verifiable transcript because of the audio tapes. Everything that was said was also recorded with audio tapes, and it was reconstructed by Simmons. And now to this day, you'll even have Danelle, who just recently, Darlie's sister, just recently said, well, read the transcripts. Read the transcripts. It's been reconstructed by audio tape. I see Zav shaking her head up now, but it looks weird to you. And I get that, and you understand it, but
Finding those, Rich.
Right. I do have a copy of the revised transcripts that were redone by the new court reporter, but she wouldn't put her sole sign on it because when she received the information, there was missing information in that.
Tapes were missing.
so what was missing? Tell us what part of the trial is missing. Who testified that it's missing? She did seal it. The court after the courts approved it, she sealed it. That's very good. But tell us what was missing, Rich. Tell us what testimony was missing.
Yes, the tapes were missing.
Yeah,
So
isn't that
she said,
ironic?
I'm not.
It was a part of the tape, yeah, that was missing. I think it was 58. But tell us what part of the testimony that we don't have today. Tell us. Let us know.
Not going to sign off on this and put my name out there and put my credibility on the line.
Her name is on the new transcripts. Yes, she did. This young lady's mistaken, or I wouldn't know her name. Her name's Simmons, and it's right under the Simmons transcripts. It's right, it says Simmons.
When there's missing information.
Yeah, they
Hang on. No, Rich, it wasn't the evidence. And you said at the beginning of this that you felt like she was guilty. Then you met Darlie Key. You started writing to Darlie. And then all of a sudden, she's innocent. Yours is biased by the family. They got to you. They did that same shit to me, buddy.
Okay.
Well, I had asked Darlie Lynn what had happened, and I also went by what she said had happened.
So he went by the convicted person, what she said.
And I matched that to the crime scene evidence, and it matches perfectly. Perfectly. I can't believe that people on the non-support side can't see it.
Okay, if what Darlie said to you while she was wide awake matches perfectly, then why were you doing a video with her on Darlie's regression therapy? Because that doesn't match perfectly. That puts two intruders in. That puts Darlie rolling off the couch. That puts her fighting and struggling with the intruder in front of the couch, Rich. Think about it.
Yeah.
I just can't believe it.
And also, I wanted to ask. We know that with the injuries to her neck, the injuries to her arms, were there any visible injuries to Darlie's legs? Were there any injuries to Darlie's back? Anything like that we need to take note of? Because we do know that there were no cuts on her feet, yet there were, her blood was on the floor with the shattered glass.
Well, here's the problem that we have with it. Okay, with the glass. Okay, there's a lot of questions surrounding that because even Darlie Kia told me that when she had went to the crime scene shortly after the crime had occurred.
You mean she was in the crime scene shortly after it occurred? You mean they let a citizen in there to walk around and kick stuff around? Is that what you're about to say? Because that glass could not have been there. I don't know what he's going to say next, but I have a feeling he's going to say some bullshit.
She said there were people going in and out of that house kicking that
including her.
Glass all over the place. She said they had.
She said that she saw that. That means she was inside of there too, right? So she was possibly contaminating evidence herself. They wouldn't let her in there, dude. They didn't let the chief of police in there. The officer standing at the door would not let the chief of police inside of there.
Had it on her shoes. It was all through the carpet. So we don't even know. We don't even know.
Why is Darlie Key inside of that crime scene? Are you trying to make us believe that Darlie Key was inside that crime scene while there were investigators there? No, sir. No, sir.
Know when that glass got broke, or what it really, where it really fell and broke, or anything. We don't
Know where it fell and broke. Darlie's own statement said that there was glass all over the floor.
know because they kicked it all. They contaminated that crime.
If Darlie Key was in there, Rich, then she took part in contaminating. You're saying that she saw this. You're saying that Darlie Key. I'm not mad at him, but you're saying that she went in that scene and saw that they let her in there. Fuck out of here, dude.
Scene so bad because you had a lot of inexperienced detectives that went into that house.
How are they inexperienced? You think James Cron that was inside that house? 2,300 crime scenes, 4,000 with bodies. 39 years experience. Commander of the Dallas Crime Scene Unit.
That had never investigated a case to this magnitude. They didn't know what to do.
Them did. Cron did. That's why they called him. They know to stay off of stuff. Even Waddell said that, they was trying to stay off the blood. There was a footprint found behind the couch. A shoe print. And when Cron saw that shoe print, he had each and every first responder, including the paramedics. He tested all of their shoes, and it came back to Walling because he went behind the couch. That's not inexperience.
They were lost. You even had some family members that stated when some of those detectives come in and took a look at things, they were just froze, looked like a deer in headlights. They didn't even.
No, he's talking about Waddell. When he walked into the scene and he saw those two boys there, he froze for a minute because she was telling him that the intruder was out in the garage. So he's thinking that there is an intruder in there. He's got his gun drawn. Froze. Family members will tell you that? What family members will tell you that there was an officer that just froze? What other family members were in there besides Darlie and Darren?
Even know what to say or how to respond or what to do.
What is your opinion as to the bloody footprints being on the floor and then the glass being on top of it? Do you believe that at any
Also have to remember that the bloody footprints, if you examine the pictures again, they only have bloody footprints going away from the sink. And if she's walking back and forth to give Darren towels, her foot is going to step on the blood, and you're going to see blood going towards the sink if she actually did that. She slit her throat there, and she walked away from it, and she needed to explain why she was there. That's why you don't see any footprints leading towards the sink, only going away from it.
given point in time that Darlie picked up that glass after she had walked through that area and shattered it to stage the crime scene?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Can I?
Yeah.
She's going to say not at all, but James Cron, they shook that wine glass. They shook the wine rack, and none of the glasses fell. It does have a safety mechanism on the end of it to keep them from falling. And we can look at Ryan Kester. He's a true crime genius, right? He's a genius. He's you just look up Ryan Kester, Darlie Routier on YouTube. He has that wine rack now, and he shows you the safety mechanism that's in it because the glass is hung upside down, and you can't just bump into it and knock them out of there. You can't. You have to take it out of there.
Yeah, Tara, this is your department, Tara.
So I've just got to say it's a complete misnomer. If you look at that theory, if you look at it practically, Darlie would have had to be standing, so her blood would have pooled, right? So the glass would.
necessarily have to pull. She could have walked by it. There were drops in front of it, stationary drops, low velocity drops, low, medium, high. The drop, a perfect circle that shows that she was just standing there around that wine rack. You can see it. She just stood there.
Would have been on the outside of her feet unless she levitated up into the air. How did the glass get on top of the blood?
Right, right.
Does it make
That's what she just asked you. You talking in circles now.
sense? She would have a void pattern where her feet are. Wherever there's an object and something falls. So if you smashed the glass now and there was a chair in the way on the floor, you lift up that chair, there'd be a void mark where the
There's no chair. The glass is lightweight. You're talking in circles, Tara.
glass didn't reach that part of the chair because the chair leg is in the way or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So
Okay, so how could they be kicking it all over the place if it was only in a certain just a specified small area? Darlie said herself that glass was all over the floor. She wrote that down.
there would be a void pattern where her feet are.
No, not necessarily. And I don't think that the lady below is buying that. I can tell by her body language.
There wouldn't be glass on top of her feet. It's a complete misnomer. It makes no sense when
For you, it makes no sense. I don't think the lady below you is buying it.
you actually like when you actually
The
look
lady below her is not buying that. No.
at it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got one better for you. There's
Her only response to that was, mm-hmm. Yeah, she wasn't buying it. I don't think she wanted to hurt your feelings.
also, if you look at the crime scene photos, there's still a shard of glass that's on the wine rack.
I
Where
was
the-
just about to ask
Where,
you
where
about
the
that.
glass, where the
Which leads you more to believe that it broke up top when she had to smack it backwards to get it to come out. Right? There was also trinkets and little knickknacks on top of the glass, the wine rack. They weren't moved. They didn't move from their spot. They didn't fall over or anything. See, little knickknacks are on top of it. There's pictures of it where you can see that. Small little keepsake knickknacks. Little things like, this is my knickknack of Jesus. Small little things like that were on top of it, and they didn't move. They weren't moved. And they're trying to say that the intruder bumped into that wine rack on the way out enough to knock one glass out, but there were four of them hanging, and it was the one in the front.
glass was hanging.
That.
So
Yeah.
likely that glass got broke in the wine rack.
So it did
When she smacked it,
fall.
Yeah,
It got. Mhm.
Cron was confronted with that at trial. He was confronted with the fact that part of the glass was still intact in the wine rack.
Hmm.
So they said to him they didn't push it far enough.
the glass was not intact in the wine rack. She was talking about that there was a glass on top of the ice bucket. If the glass was still intact, if part of it came out and some of it was still hanging there, that leads more to believe that someone slapped it out of there.
Enough. Her defense. They didn't
Mm.
push it him far enough on it. But how did she pull it out without removing some part of the glass and smash it on the floor while she was standing? It makes no sense
She didn't have to pull it out. I don't think this lady below is buying anything Tara's got to say. I could be reading it wrong.
whatsoever. That part of the glass wouldn't, and it was literally sitting. It's like, when a glass breaks, part of
Mhm.
the glass was still sitting inside the rack where it would have been had.
I don't think that's correct. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I think what she's trying to allude to is that there was a piece of glass that was on top of the ice bucket that was just down below. I don't think that that's correct. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, Tara, go ahead and show me.
Wow.
Someone knocked it. And
Oh,
what I always say in this case, because of my science background and things, what I say all the time is you have to look at things and say, like,
Your science background told you that a dog sniffed its way up to that sock and stood stationary and that told you that a car came and picked the intruder up. But you're failing to understand that Bill Gorsuch was the neighbor right across the street. He had a perfect view down that side of that house and the front of the house, and he didn't see any cars or hear any noise.
Anything's possible, but is it probable? Is
Exactly.
Right.
it probable? You have to ask yourself that question when you're
When you're trying to stage a scene, is it probable? Yes.
looking into cases like this, because
Right.
like the things they say, oh, anything's possible. Yeah, anything might be possible. You know, aliens might come down tomorrow, but
Darlie could have bled to death, right? If she would have just cut the 2 millimeters more, she could have bled to death. Is it possible? No. She could have died too. The only way that she could have died is if that ambulance smashed into a tree on the way to Baylor. She wasn't about to die. She didn't know. It was a 9 centimeter cut.
it's not
Well,
probable that it's
if
going
you
to
ask my grandfather, aliens come back anytime. But
But that's one of the points that he was a Darlie supporter to begin with. Ryan, I'm sure you guys know about him.
yes.
And
I know.
two things that he said that swayed him, and it's very powerful for the Darlie is guilty side, right? Because they had a supporter who was very invested, who is now changed his mind. And one of the things is
And not only that, he is a true crime genius. He really is a Jesus. And they took Ryan Kester, all right? When Ryan Kester thought that maybe she was innocent, he was doing a documentary called All American Murder, and he thought that she was innocent, and he started getting into groups and stuff at 14 years old, right? He was in a group called the Darlie Routier debate case, right? That's run by Kathy Ramsey, and I think it's still around today. But they took him at 14 years old and made him a moderator of that group. And I was in the group when they did that. They would debate with me. And I was in the group and I was telling him, he's only 14 years old. Oh, but he's a genius. He's got this down pat. And as soon as he left support, one of the things and I talked to Ryan Kester not too long ago. I called him. He was up in New York. He's working on something up there. And one of the things that they did to him when he left support was attack his homosexuality. Darlie Key did it. Damien Fraggenpain did it. They attacked his homosexuality because he left support.
he got something that looks like the rack. He thinks it is the rack from a yard sale, the wine rack. And he said no matter how hard he tried to get that bottle, the wine glass to fall, it has a mechanism that won't allow it to fall.
Damn, I love this girl. I would love to bet on this panel.
But now, if the thought is it didn't fall, it was broken while it was still on the rack.
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
Even the girl below, Tara, who I don't think was buying Tara's stuff, is shaking her head up and down right now.
Evidence
That's the most
definitely indicates it.
probable. Yeah, that is the most probable answer to it.
Right.
interesting.
Okay.
And if it was broken inside the rack, that means Darlie smacked it. She's trying to say an intruder bumped into the rack on the way out. Yes. Tara, you're agreeing with your own negative.
So I just wanted to clarify. Were there any injuries found on Darlie's legs? Were there any injuries found on Darlie's back area?
Well, as far as her legs are concerned, not to my knowledge. She said that in the emergency room at Baylor University Hospital in Dallas, she said she felt as though there was a little bit of pressure down there, like in the.
She got pressure down there when they asked her, did she feel like she was sexually assaulted, Rich? She said, well, I do feel kind of pressure down there. Not down there, your legs. She meant down there, her private parts. Come on, I know you know this.
The abdomen area or the upper thigh area.
No, she meant her vagina. They were asking her about being raped.
She did
Like
it.
someone straddled her, maybe, or something.
Exactly.
Someone
And
was
if you
straddling
look
her.
at the regression therapy report, it kind of
If you look at the regression therapy, Rich, that's a totally different version of what you said when you looked at the case, that it matched up exactly to what Darlie said. The regression therapy has her falling off the couch onto the floor. So you can't have this both ways, buddy. You're about to try it, though.
It matches that. But
Yeah.
anyway,
The regression therapy doesn't match that. And you were talking about that. Gotcha, buddy.
as far as her back, I have never seen a photograph of Darlie Lynn's back when they did the photos, but I have heard, and I hate going into the realm of speculation because
He always says he hates going into speculation, and then he immediately goes into speculation. If anybody watches through his videos, he says, I hate to speculate, but I'm about to do it.
it tends to get people in trouble. But from what I understand, there was a pretty nasty mark on her upper back, but I have never seen it.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify because I had seen.
Oh, no, say there's a nasty mark on her back. And Bathsheba's in the chat, and she says Ryan was mad because the judge gave him a dressing down. No, the judge wouldn't let him have any of the evidence. Yeah, he was upset about that. Why not? And he was trying to prove that she was guilty. Why wouldn't the judge help? If they're trying to hide something.
Seen an interview with Barbara Davis, and she had said that after she had written the book Precious Angels, and she had gotten that that call from that mystery man that nobody seems to know.
From in the DA's office, and that's the thing that Rich tries to do. He said, "Well, I could say, but I'm not really going to say." She never. The mystery man. Okay, the call that she got was not from somebody in the DA's office. The call she got was from a magazine editor by the name of Christopher Wayne Brown. And he wrote this book called Media Tried, Justice Denied, where he photoshopped videos, or the pictures, right? And you can see this guy on the Lisa Gibbons show, part 3, 1999, right? He was a friend of Barbara Davis. He was also a friend to the Routier family. But she said that she got that call from a deep throat in the DA's office, which would mean that someone in the DA's office knows that they're lying. But who would do that? And she never named them. Just like Darren never named the multiple people that he asked to break into his house. And those multiple people, they didn't show up that night with a van. The idea was to steal all of his furniture, put it in a U-Haul, and take it and hide it, and then he'd give the payout back. They didn't show up in a van, did they?
Rough voice.
I know who that is.
You
Are
do?
you not telling, Rich?
Oh,
Yeah, I can't tell. Get the fuck out of here. You don't know who that is, Rich. Some of this bullshit that you're saying is pissing me off, man.
I know who it is.
please.
Isn't it obvious?
I don't know if I should.
No,
Also, there's somebody in the DA's office that was trying to help Darlie? Is that what you're saying?
don't. I don't want to pressure you. I'm messing with you.
He don't know. He does not know. Because he says that he wanted to talk to Barb Davis before she died, and he never did. You can hear that in his podcast. I really wish I could have talked to Barb Davis before she died. But he didn't get to talk to her. Ain't that right, Rich? The only one that could tell you that deep throat name would be Barb Davis. And you never talked to her. I'm going to let this go because this is good.
Yeah, so she had indicated that she had seen some of the photos and there was a nasty injury back there. But when I went back to go,
Barb Davis did not say anything about seeing the photos. There was nothing on her back. And Barb Davis didn't say anything about a bruise on Darlie's back. No. What she said was that she didn't see the bruises on Darlie's arms. She said they didn't send that back. But in her book, which I've got it here, in her book, she writes about those same bruises that she said she never saw. And in the picture section of Precious Angels that she wrote, there's a picture of Darlie standing there, and you can see the bruise on her arm. But she said she didn't see that.
find it so that I could share it with the ladies, I couldn't find it. Like it was gone. And I was like, oh my goodness. I know I heard that. Like I'm not.
She had no injury to her back. If you look at the medical testimony, there were people that wiped her down. She did that. She had no injury to her back. She did.
Because I was cleaning house and I was listening to it. And when I had heard it, I stopped and literally rewound it like times. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Did I just hear what I thought I just heard? Yeah. So, okay. Awesome sauce.
Well,
Great.
there's a lot of other injuries though that weren't documented or listed. Let's not forget that the inside of Darlie Lynn's mouth was all.
The inside of Darlie Lynn's mouth, there's no medical record of her inside of her mouth. They gave her a thorough checking, right? The only ones that said that Darlie's mouth was all tore up, even Darlie said, well, my mouth felt kind of raw, but she didn't say anything about having cuts, right? And the medical staff did not treat her. They checked her thoroughly. I don't know who has a nursing background or not, but when you have someone that is attacked like that, you check every part of their body, right? And the only ones that were saying that she had that was the family members. You have one time where they say Darlie Key was feeding her ice chips, all right? And then you have another time where Cyrilla was feeding her ice chips. But none of the nurses saw that. None of the nurses that were sitting in the room saw that.
All cut up. It was so bad that when she was in the intensive care unit, and Cyrilla Routier said this, that they actually.
Routier, you can see her on my videos, right? You can see Cyrilla. She said, and when she was in the hospital, she lifted up her gown and she had bruises all up her ribs to her nipple. And there were no bruises on her body like that. None. None.
They had to get Vaseline on Q-tips and go in between her teeth around her gums.
Oh, Cyrilla never said that. They said that she was giving her ice chips, Rich.
Because the inside of her mouth was all cut and burned up. Now, we've never been able to determine what did that.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't. The only people that reported her mouth being tore up like that were family members. No medical staff reported that. And they would know. They would be checking for her teeth. They'd be checking her eye sockets. They'd be checking behind her ears, which they did. They checked her feet. They checked everything. They did, and nor did Darlie complain about it. It's not in any nurse's notes anywhere. None.
And it's not in the notes, Rich. None of the nurses or doctors have mentioned this.
Right. Thank you. I love you, Bella Lugosi. And I've never listened to this all the way through. Never. And these girls seem like they know more than Rich does. It wasn't in the medical stuff because she didn't report it. The only ones that reported that were Darlie's family members. All the ones that say she's not guilty.
And if you look, Darlie Lynn actually mentions that with that interview with Susanna Reed, the most recent interview, and it's available on YouTube. I'm sorry.
Is it the death row stories or?
No, it's a new one with Susanna Reed. She's a journalist from the United Kingdom.
Gross on there when they were getting.
And when she's interviewing Darlie Lynn said her mouth was all cut and burned up on the inside.
Of course, but Darlie Lynn said she didn't kill her kids. How come Darlie Lynn didn't tell the nursing staff that her mouth was all cut and burned up? How come she waited till years later in an interview where nobody can dispute her? Right? Because she didn't mention that at the hospital to the medical staff. She did not.
Inside. The interesting thing is if it was caused from a chemical, it wasn't cut and burned up on the outside.
If they use chloroform or xylene, that stuff it would burn the outside. If somebody's sticking a sock in your mouth, right, they're not going to just go get straight in your mouth and not around your lips. It's going to come out, right? Xylene burns. Chloroform burns, Rich. She did not have burns on the outside of her lips. She didn't have a red mark. There was no smell, no nothing.
That's what's strange about the whole thing. Nobody really seems to have an answer to it, but I find it interesting.
You would find it interesting.
Like a chemical burn, I in my head, How I see it is when you're struggling against someone putting pressure on your mouth, right? Like whether it's the sock or someone's
Could have
big
been from
hand
the
or
top, yeah.
something. You're doing a lot of damage. You could obviously do, and we know this from the Chris Watts case of how one of the girls was found in her, there's a lot of damage inside her mouth.
Oh, Bella fought back. Shine like Shanann. That's one of my favorite true crime cases. Because you got to see it inside and out. God bless Bella. God bless Nico. God bless Cece. And God bless Shanann. She loved her husband.
From, Chris Watts putting pressure. So, yeah, that's how, but was it a chemical burn?
Well, nope. And I don't think Bella believes the story.
Unlikely. I work with, in the line of work that I do, I work with a lot of chemicals. And somebody had made a reference on several occasions, it was probably xylene. I work with
Xylene burns, Rich, and it has a distinct smell. You use it to wash tools off.
xylene. Xylene is an extremely powerful chemical. And I can tell you, it will burn you bad if it gets on.
Burn the outside of your lips bad, and she did not have burns. You're talking about this sock as if somebody pressed it and it just went in her mouth without touching the sides of her mouth at all. They had a really good aim.
On your skin. It will.
Plus, Darlie screaming and fighting and struggling. She's not what? She just opened her mouth for it.
Burn you. And there's no. I mean, some people say, well, maybe that's what somebody did. They put a chemical on the sock and held the sock to her mouth, but it didn't burn.
The outside.
And we're on the outside now, unless they use perhaps maybe a chloroform.
Chloroform. Let's take a look. I'll just leave this right here. Now, what were you saying, Rich?
And we're going into the area of speculation here,
Right.
but
Yeah, you don't like to speculate.
chloroform's not going to burn you.
Oh. I'm catching them left and right. That's a simple Google search, Rich. Chloroform will burn you, and anybody that has worked around chemicals will know that. Let me see you, Rich, on your podcast, take some chloroform and wipe it across your mouth.
What if
Right.
the actual sock? Because you wouldn't take like a flannel and rub your gums with it, would you?
Right.
So say
No.
if you're struggling and someone's got the sock, it could just be friction from the
Could be.
material.
Right.
She had no irritation around her mouth. She said that she had it on the inside, and she's the only one that said that. And she didn't say that while she was in the hospital. She wanted to make it appear like she was gagged with something.
Yeah, it definitely could be. It's another area of the case that's unexplained, unfortunately. Nobody really
And
knows.
undocumented. I mean, I'm talking about as far as the transcripts go, because that's the stuff that's like solid that everyone's like, well, this is quote unquote proof, right? So why didn't these nurses make those notes? We know when they got
Because they didn't see it. That's why. They didn't see it. The only ones that reported that was family members. He just put Darlie Key in the crime scene with investigators. That did not happen.
out on the stand, a lot of what they said was different than what they had written in their notes.
Actually, no. In their notes, they're writing down that she was tearful, that she was whiny, right? And when they got on, because that's what they saw, that she was tearful and she was whiny. But on the stand, they were to give an opinion of her behavior, right? The focus notes, you can't put opinions in focus notes, right? But on the stand, when they were asked for their personal opinion, they said she had a flat effect, that no mother would act that way, right? They're not going to write that in the notes, right? And it's the nurses. I've been able to speak to a few of the nurses. Jody Fitz died, Christopher Weigeltz, and they had kind of explained that to me, that the focus notes are not based on opinion. They're based on a visual of what they're going. And they did say she was teary eyed. But we got to remember, focus notes cannot be based on opinion, only based on what they see.
And
That is true. They were
and the
definitely
defense.
coached.
No, they were not coached. That means that they were told what to say. That means they were lying. See, the prosecution does have a right to meet with the witnesses that they're going to put on the stand to let them know what the court thing is going to be about, just as the defense does. The defense is to meet with their attorney and say, okay, you're going to wear this, and you're going to sit there. You're not going to show this. Just like the Jodi Arias case. Let's look at Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias didn't wear glasses. She didn't wear glasses. Those glasses that she had on, that just to make her look like a librarian, like that came from her attorney Jennifer Wilmot, and Jennifer Wilmot actually brought her clothes. And if you look at that case, if you go back and look at the court case, she was dressed just like her attorney. She wanted not to look like the sexy woman that she was. She wanted to look like a plain Jane library type.
Yeah, and definitely they all had a meeting at the Hilton or whatever the YMO or whatever that is. But
they have a meeting there, and Douglas Mulder also met, and Richard Mosley also met with the people they were going to put on the stand. The defense did.
But yeah, I never had I heard about the inside of her mouth.
Yeah, because you won't hear about it in the medical records. You'll hear about it from the family members. Thank you.
From the transcripts.
It's because it wasn't in the medical records. None of the nurses saw that. None of the nurses saw the bruises on her arms either. Neither did the doctors. They didn't see the bruises on her arm. Dr. Dilwan said that they've never. He's seen worked with women that have lost their children right away, and then none of them had such a flat effect as Darlie did.
And the bruising is another thing. And on the arms, people talk about the bruising. I know exactly what that bruising's from. Yeah, and you never
look. That bruising, according to Dr. Alejandro Sandros, was the chief. He was the medical examiner for the emergency room that night. He said that bruising did not appear to come from any event that happened on 6/6/96, but a couple days after. None of them saw that bruising. And now watch what Rich is going to say, because some of the jurors thought that the bruising she got on her arm. Now the one with the stab wound in it, it did have some bruising around it, but her whole other arm was all black all the way up to the top. They believed that bruising happened after she left the hospital. And when you see the pictures of her bruising, she's standing there in a gray shirt and a pair of shorts looking all sad. That was taken 4 days later after she got out of the hospital at the Rowlett Police Department. And none of the medical staff saw that bruising. None of them.
I just can't believe that like a lot of medical professionals don't get this, okay? And if I could give you a very brief instance as to what happened to me one
He's going
time.
to talk about his leg and his blood clot again.
Okay.
I was working out on a job and I felt something pop behind my knee. Very strange feeling. Whatever. I just blew it off and didn't think anything of it. Well, about 2 or 3 days later, I was in a pair of shorts and I was talking with a buddy of mine, and I happened to turn around and he's like, "My God, what happened to your leg?"
Wow.
What are you talking about? And I took a look at it and I seen it. I was black from the top of my leg, like right below my butt, all the way to my foot.
Wow.
Black as night. And this friend of mine was actually LPN. He's like, "Listen, you need to go get that looked at like yesterday." So I did. Here I had a blood clot in my leg and the thing had burst. So what that was internal bleeding. Okay. So if you look at the Darlie Lynn's arm, where she's got the bruising from the shoulder all the way down to her wrist.
None of the medical staff saw it. Read the testimony. None of the medical staff saw it. You had several doctors, 2 attending surgeons, all the nurses. None of them saw it. And if you think that every one of them were lying and that they were coached by the prosecution to lie and risk their careers for the no.
That's all internal bleeding from the stab wound that had occurred here in her arm.
Yeah, the stab wound, yeah, that part I believe, but it wasn't that. It was just a little bit red while she was in the hospital.
She was stabbed here in the right arm all the way to the bone, and that's just from internal bleeding. And Darlie Lynn also had said on several occasions that she bruised very easily. She was an easy bruiser.
You know, Darlie Lynn say that she bruised easily. No, Cirilla Routier told me that she bruised really easily, and she said that when she had Devin, that they gave her IVs in her hands and in her arms, and that her arms bruised up the same exact way. That's one of the things I caught Cirilla on. A lot of the supporters would tell you that those bruises are defense wounds. But what they failed to mention to a lot of people is in Devin's autopsy, both his heels were bruised. And he had a contusion on his inner thigh. Whoever stabbed him, he kicked at him. And then right beside Devin was a knife print in blood, Darlie's blood. And a lot of us non-supporters believe that he was fighting her back. She had her hand over his mouth. She dropped that knife to put her other hand over his mouth until he stopped, and then she hit him right straight in the heart. That's what we believe.
So, but nobody looks at that. Darren hit her with a baseball bat. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
Well, she pounded her arms on the counter.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's speculation.
to cause bruising
would've-
like that, that's blood. That blackness is blood. That's
She would have
internal bleeding.
also, in cognitive psychology, we learn that like she would have also had to have changed hands, and you know how unheard of that is.
Yes.
Well,
It's
no, because it's not unheard of. As I honestly believe that where she got stabbed in this one hand, what Rich is talking about. Because you can see that in the hospital. It's starting to bruise up in the hospital. They're talking about more of the other hand that was bruised all the way up. Yeah. Remember, if you can slit your own throat, then you can bang your hands.
it's like unheard of because our cognition works in a way that we make lives easier for ourselves. We don't think about certain things we do because we just do them automatically. So you don't.
And we don't end up being charged with killing our children either, do we?
For her to change hands in the middle of it is absolutely unheard of.
It's
And
not unheard of. It's not unheard of. She's trying to throw people off.
most people who have been caught of doing things like this, trying to, like Diane Downs, people like that,
Yeah.
they have been caught because they use their dominant hand to inflict their wounds.
But
I know,
Tara,
yeah.
what they're
Okay. You think Darlie might not have knew that? You know, one of her favorite shows was shit. She liked to watch crime shows. I can't say which favorite one it was. Forensic Files, I believe.
gonna say, so this is what they say, and I know you guys have heard it. What they say is, if you're planning on getting away with murdering your two children,
It doesn't
and
work like that.
they'll say that she was smarter than the average bear, and she used both of her hands to make it look like it was an assailant.
Watch. Tara's gonna discredit her. I just know her.
That's what they say. Yeah, but I agree with Tara though, because you're gonna cut your neck with your opposite hand that you are like.
But look, it would be easier actually if you try it with a knife. It would be easier to use you can do it either way. That's all you're flipping the knife around. Seriously, try it, test it. Try to do it with your either dominant hand. You can do it either way. It's a flick of the wrist that matters. Just a flick of the wrist.
I don't think so. That you
No.
just naturally go.
And there's no hesitation marks either.
Yes, there are hesitation marks. Yes, ma'am. Yes, they are classified as hesitation marks. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
No
there's no
hesitation
way.
marks.
This
And
might be a
they're
good
always
time.
present. They are always present in suicidal throat slitting. If you research suicidal throat slitting, you will see it's a very, very rare thing in general because it hurts
Mhm.
like absolute hell.
She's right.
And I can't imagine anyone wanting to do that to themselves. And usually
Right.
people that do are into
Okay. I'm going to leave this at 2 hour mark. And I'm going to come back to it. This is a 4 hour and 17-minute video. I want you to tell me what you think. Go over and visit Zav Girl on the Darlie Routier case. These are very friendly people. She has an excellent true crime channel. I would encourage anybody to go over there. I ran it by her today. If that Rich and I could come on her panel, just me and Rich, and talk about the Darlie Routier case, right? Just me and him, a civil thing. That way he's not giving his panel, he's not going to piss Darlie Key off or make anybody mad that I'm on his panel. Because what he does somewhere else is his business. But I asked Zav Girl if we could do that. And she said she'd run it by Rich. It's up to Rich. But you can see from right here how that's going to go. Thanks for watching. Justice for Devin and Damon.